struggling single father breaks down in tears after recognizing a necklace he gave to his first love, now worn by a millionaire CEO. What she does next leaves everyone frozen. Before we begin, just know, no matter where you are in the world, I'm glad you're here. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Michael Harrison pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Carter Technologies. At 42, his weathered hands told the story of a man who'd fought hard battles and lost most of them. The janitor's uniform hung loose on his thin frame. He'd lost weight since Sophie's latest hospital stay. 3 months ago, he'd been a construction foreman. Good pay, steady work, respect. Then the company downsized, and Michael found himself scrubbing floors in the city's most prestigious corporate tower. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford when his 8-year-old daughter needed her cancer medications. "Sophie, Daddy's working late again," he whispered to her photo taped inside his cart. Her bright smile beamed back at him, the same courage she'd shown through 2 years of treatments. The conference room ahead buzzed with activity. Through the glass walls, Michael could see suits worth more than his annual salary. A merger meeting he'd heard the security guard mention. Millions of dollars being discussed while he cleaned up their coffee spills. He knocked gently and entered, eyes down, invisible as always. The executives barely acknowledged him as he emptied trash bins and wiped tables. Their conversation continued about quarterly projections and market dominance. Then she leaned forward. The woman at the head of the table, clearly in charge, reached for a document. As she did, her silk blouse shifted slightly, revealing a delicate gold chain around her neck. Michael's hands froze on the trash bin. Hanging from that chain was a heart-shaped locket. Small, simple, but unmistakable. He'd saved for 3 months of part-time work at 17 to buy it. Had it engraved at the mall jewelry store. Forever M&E. The woman straightened, and the locket disappeared beneath her blouse again. But Michael had seen enough. Those green eyes, now framed by designer glasses. The way she tucked her auburn hair behind her ear when concentrating. 25 years older, impossibly more polished, but unmistakably her. Emily. His Emily. The trash bin slipped from his numb fingers, clattering to the floor. Spring 1999, Riverside High School. "You're staring again, Harrison." Emily Matthews laughed, catching Michael's gaze across the chemistry lab. Her hair was longer then, wild curls that she constantly fought with, unlike the sleek bob she wore now. "Can't help it," 17-year-old Michael grinned, his voice cracking slightly. "You're prettier than any chemical equation." "That's the worst pickup line in the history of science," Emily giggled, but her cheeks flushed pink. She was 16, brilliant, and completely out of his league. Her father owned half the town's businesses, while Michael worked afternoons at Murphy's auto shop to help his single mother pay rent. But somehow, impossibly, Emily Matthews liked him back. It started with study sessions, Emily struggling with hands-on lab work despite her perfect test scores. Michael brilliant with his hands but hopeless with theory. They balanced each other perfectly. "Meet me at Miller's Point tonight?" Michael asked after their teacher assigned them as lab partners for the semester. "My parents will kill me if they find out," Emily whispered. "Then we'll make sure they don't." Miller's Point overlooked the entire valley, where teenagers had been parking for decades. But Michael and Emily didn't go there for what most couples did. They talked. About dreams, fears, futures that seemed both impossible and inevitable. "I want to change the world," Emily said one night, lying on a blanket under the stars. "Start a company that actually helps people, not just makes money." "You will," Michael said with the certainty only first love brings. "You're going to be somebody important." "What about you?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I just want to be happy, have a family, kids who know their dad loves them." Emily turned toward him, eyes serious. "I love you, Michael Harrison." "I love you too, Emily Matthews." The locket came 2 months later for her 17th birthday. Michael had worked double shifts, saved every penny. "It's beautiful," Emily breathed, touching the engraving with trembling fingers. "Forever," Michael said, fastening it around her neck. "Forever," she whispered back. October 1999. Emily, honey, we need to talk. Margaret Matthews's voice carried that tone Emily had learned to fear. Cold. Final. The voice that had ended her piano lessons when she wasn't progressing fast enough, that had transferred her from public school when her grade slipped to a minus. Emily sat across from her parents in their pristine living room, still wearing Michael's Letterman jacket. She'd been careful, so careful, but somehow they'd found out about Miller's point. This nonsense with the Harrison boy ends now, her father said, not looking up from his newspaper. Robert Matthews was a man who solved problems by eliminating them. I've spoken to his mother. He won't be contacting you again. Daddy, you can't? I can and I have. His voice cut through her protest like ice. You're 17, Emily. You have college applications to complete, a future to secure. This infatuation is jeopardizing everything we've worked for. But I love him. Margaret's laugh was sharp, bitter. Love, sweetheart, you're a child. You don't understand what love costs. Pack your things, Robert continued. You're going to stay with Aunt Catherine in Boston until graduation. Finish your senior year at Brookline Academy. Early admission to Harvard has already been arranged. Emily's world tilted. No, I won't go. You will, or the Harrison family will find themselves without a home. Robert's tone was matter of fact, discussing the weather. Michael's mother has a mortgage I can call in? His college fund that he doesn't know I've been made aware of? A scholarship that can disappear with one phone call? The blood drained from Emily's face. You wouldn't. Try me. That night, Emily climbed out her bedroom window one last time. She found Michael at Miller's Point, waiting as always. I have to go, she said, tears streaming down her face. My parents, they'll destroy your family if I don't. We'll run away, Michael said desperately. Tonight, we'll figure it out. With what money? What future? Emily touched the locket at her throat. They'll find us and they'll make sure you pay for it. The next morning, Emily was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. Michael waited at their spot for weeks, called until the Matthews' number was disconnected. Asked everyone, but no one knew where Emily had gone. Present day, Michael's legs gave out. He sank into the nearest chair, staring at the woman who'd owned his heart for 25 years. Emily was speaking to her board members, completely unaware that her first love was sitting 10 feet away, dressed as hired help. She was magnificent. Powerful in a way that went beyond money or position. This was the girl who'd dreamed of changing the world, and apparently she'd done exactly that. Sir? Sir, are you all right? One of the executives was looking at him with concern. Michael realized he was crying. Tears streamed down his face as he stared at Emily, at the locket that proved she'd never forgotten. I'm sorry, he stammered, standing quickly. I'll just finish cleaning. But Emily had heard the commotion. She looked up from her documents, and for a split second their eyes met. Michael saw the exact moment recognition flickered across her face. Her hand flew instinctively to her throat, to the locket hidden beneath her blouse. Michael? The word was barely a whisper. The conference room fell silent. 20 executives watched their iron-willed CEO stare at the janitor, with an expression none of them had ever seen before. Michael couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stand there as 25 years of grief and loss and desperate love crashed over him like a tidal wave. Emily stood slowly, never breaking eye contact. Could everyone please excuse us for a moment? Ms. Carter, we have the Yamamoto call in 10 minutes, her assistant protested. Cancel it. Emily's voice was steady, but Michael could see her hands shaking. Cancel everything. The room emptied reluctantly, executives casting curious glances back at their CEO and the janitor who'd somehow stopped time itself. When they were alone, Emily walked around the conference table. Each step seemed to take forever. You kept it, Michael said finally, his voice hoarse. Emily's hand pressed against her throat. Every day for 25 years. My God, Michael, what happened to you? Emily's voice was soft, but her eyes held 25 years of unanswered questions. Michael looked down at his janitor's uniform, at his work-roughened hands. Life happened. I tried to find you, Emily said suddenly. After college, after I got control of my trust fund, I hired investigators, but you'd moved. Your mother had died, and you'd just vanished. Mom passed when I was 23. Cancer. Michael's voice was flat. I moved to Denver, then Phoenix, worked construction, eventually came back here when... He trailed off. When what? When my daughter needed specialists. Sophie has leukemia. Emily's face went white. Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. She's in remission now, but the bills... He gestured at his uniform. This pays for her medications. You're married? Was. Sarah died 4 years ago, car accident. Michael's voice cracked. It's just me and Sophie now. Emily closed her eyes, absorbing the weight of his words. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. I never married, she said quietly. I have a son, James. He's 16. But I never. There was never anyone else. How is that possible? Michael gestured helplessly. Look at you. You're incredible. Because every man I met wasn't you. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. I kept hoping someday. Why didn't you come back? The question Michael had carried for 25 years finally escaped. After you turned 18, after you had control of your life, why didn't you come back? Emily's hand went to the locket again. Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid you'd moved on, found someone who deserved you. Because I thought it was too late. It's never too late, Michael said, stepping closer. Isn't it? Emily's laugh was bitter. Look at us, Michael. Look at what we've become. I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And you're poor, Michael finished. You can say it. I was going to say broken, Emily whispered. We're both broken. They stood in silence, the weight of lost years hanging between them like a chasm. I have to go, Michael said finally. My shift? No. Emily's voice was stronger now, more like the woman who commanded boardrooms. You don't work here anymore. Michael's heart sank. Of course, she couldn't have her past cleaning her offices. But you work for me now, Emily continued. Whatever you need. Medical bills, Sophie's treatment, everything. Let me help. I can't take your charity, Em. It's not charity. Emily stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Still the same vanilla scent she'd worn at 17. It's love. That evening, Emily sat in her penthouse office long after her staff had gone home, staring at the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows. The locket lay open on her desk, the tiny photograph inside faded but unmistakable. A picture of her and Michael at senior prom, the one dance they'd shared before her world imploded. She'd built an empire, made Forbes' most powerful women list 3 years running, commanded respect from world leaders and billionaires. But she'd trade it all for one more night under the stars at Miller's Point. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Michael. Emily gave me your number. Is it really okay to text? Emily smiled through her tears, typing back, It's more than okay. How's Sophie? Asleep, rough day at chemo. She's brave, Em, braver than me. I'd like to meet her. She'd like that. She loves princess stories, says she's going to marry a prince someday. Emily's heart clenched. Maybe she will. Em, about today, about your offer. I can't let you pay for everything. It's too much. Emily stared at the message for a long moment, then called him. He answered on the first ring. Michael, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you today. What is it? Emily's hand trembled as she opened her desk drawer, pulling out a folder she'd kept locked away for 16 years. Inside were medical records, legal documents, and one photograph that made her heart stop every time she looked at it. I didn't just disappear after high school, Michael. I was pregnant. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for an eternity. What? Michael's voice was barely audible. We have a son, Michael. I was 17, scared, and my parents. They made me give him up for adoption. I never told you because by the time I realized I was pregnant, you were already gone, already in college. A son, Michael repeated, his voice hollow. We have a son. His name is James, James Carter. I adopted him back when I turned 25 and had money to fight for him. He's been with me for 10 years now, but he doesn't know. He thinks his birth parents were strangers. James Carter, Michael whispered. Your 16-year-old son. Our 16-year-old son. The line went quiet except for the sound of Michael crying. When he spoke again, his voice was shattered. How do I tell Sophie she has a brother? How do I explain to an 8-year-old that her daddy had a child he never knew existed? Together, Emily said firmly. We figure it out together, all of us. Outside her office window, the city sparkled like stars. Like the night sky over Miller's Point, where two teenagers had promised each other forever, never knowing that forever would take 25 years to find its way home. 3 days later, Sophie's hospital room was painted sunshine yellow, decorated with her drawings of princesses and castles. She sat cross-legged on the bed, bald head covered by a pink knitted cap, working on a puzzle of Disney characters. Daddy, you said someone special was coming to visit, she said, not looking up from fitting Cinderella's slipper into place. Michael's hands shook as he adjusted her blanket. Yes, sweetheart, her name is Emily. She's someone Daddy knew a long time ago. Like Mommy? Different from Mommy, Michael said carefully. Emily was Daddy's friend when he was in high school. The door opened and Emily entered carrying a gift bag that looked like it cost more than Michael's monthly rent. But her eyes were red from crying, and she moved hesitantly like someone approaching a wild animal. Sophie. Emily's voice was soft, gentle. I'm Emily. Sophie looked up, and Michael watched his daughter's face light up with the same joy she showed when nurses brought ice cream. You're really pretty, Sophie said matter-of-factly. Daddy said you were pretty, but I didn't know you were princess pretty. Emily laughed, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, sweetheart. You're absolutely beautiful. I used to be prettier, before the medicine made my hair fall out. Sophie touched her cap self-consciously. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, Emily said, settling into the chair beside the bed. Hair doesn't make someone beautiful. Courage does. And your daddy tells me you're the bravest person he knows. Sophie beamed. I beat cancer twice. Well, almost twice. Dr. Peterson says if I keep being good, the bad cells will go away forever. Emily's composure cracked. She looked at Michael over Sophie's head, her expression saying what words couldn't. How do you do this? How do you watch your child fight for her life? I brought you something, Emily said, offering the gift bag. Inside was a jewelry box that played A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes when opened. Inside the box, nestled in pink silk, was a child-sized locket identical to Emily's. It's just like yours, Sophie gasped, noticing Emily's chain. That's because we're going to be very special friends, Emily said, fastening the locket around Sophie's neck. And special friends wear matching jewelry. What's inside? Emily opened Sophie's locket, revealing a tiny mirror. So you can always remember how beautiful and brave you are. Sophie threw her arms around Emily's neck, and Michael watched the woman he'd never stopped loving fall in love with his daughter. 2 weeks later, James, come meet Michael, Emily called from the kitchen of her Beacon Hill mansion. James Carter descended the stairs with the casual confidence of a teenager who'd grown up with privilege. He was tall for 16, with Michael's dark hair and Emily's green eyes, a combination so striking that Michael felt his knees go weak. So you're Mom's old friend, James said, extending a hand with perfect manners. Nice to meet you, sir. Michael shook his son's hand, memorizing every detail. The way James stood, the timbre of his voice, the small scar above his left eyebrow. How'd you get that scar? Michael asked without thinking. James touched his forehead, surprised. Skateboard accident when I was 12. Needed 6 stitches. I have the same scar, Michael said quietly. Same place, same size. Bicycle accident when I was 11. Emily, watching from the doorway, saw the moment James began to really look at Michael. The similarities were subtle but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. Mom says you work in construction, James said, settling onto the couch. I did. Now I'm between jobs. Michael glanced at Emily, who'd insisted on paying him a generous consulting fee while he figured out his next step. That's cool. I want to be an architect, design buildings that help people, you know? Mom says I get my practical side from. James trailed off, looking confused. From genetics, Emily said smoothly. You've always been good with your hands, building things. Yeah, I guess. James looked between them, clearly sensing undercurrents he couldn't identify. So, how do you guys know each other again? Michael and Emily exchanged glances. They'd rehearsed this conversation, but facing their son made every word feel like a lie. We went to high school together, Emily said. We were close friends. Really close friends, Michael added, unable to help himself. James studied them both with the sharp intelligence Emily remembered from her own teenage years. You two dated, didn't you? A long time ago, Emily admitted. What happened? Why didn't you stay together? The question hung in the air like a blade. Emily's hand went instinctively to her locket. Sometimes life takes people in different directions, Michael said finally. But some people are lucky enough to find their way back to each other. James grinned suddenly. Are you two getting back together? That would be so cool. Like a real-life romance movie. Emily's face went scarlet. James! What? I'm 16, not 6. I know about love and stuff. James looked at Michael appraisingly. You seem nice, and Mom's been alone forever. I mean, she dates, but nobody serious. James Carter. That's enough, Emily warned, but she was fighting a smile. I'm just saying, if you two want to get married or whatever, I'm totally cool with it. Michael's heart stopped. If only it were that simple. That night, Michael found Emily on her rooftop garden staring out at Boston Harbor. The November air was crisp, but she wore only a light sweater, as if the cold couldn't touch her. He's incredible, Em, Michael said, joining her at the railing. Our son is incredible. He's you, Emily said softly. The way he thinks, the way he problem solves. Even the way he tilts his head when he's listening. It's like watching you at 16. But he's got your drive, your intelligence, the way he talks about architecture, about helping people. That's all you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching lights twinkle across the water. He asked me once why I never talk about his father, Emily said suddenly. When he was 14, going through that phase where he questioned everything, I told him his father was a good man who couldn't be part of his life. I said someday, when he was older, I'd tell him the whole story. What will you tell him? Emily turned to face him, and in the moonlight she looked exactly like the girl he'd fallen in love with at 17. The truth. That his father was the love of my life. That losing him broke something in me that never healed. That every day for 16 years I've wondered if his father would be proud of the man James is becoming. Michael stepped closer. He would be. I am. Michael, Emily whispered. And suddenly they were 17 again, standing under the stars, making promises they thought would last forever. He kissed her. Soft at first, hesitant, then with all the desperate love and longing of 25 years. Emily melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt. When they broke apart, both were crying. I never stopped loving you, Michael said. Not for a single day. I know, Emily whispered, because I never stopped either. But it's not that simple, is it? Emily's smile was heartbreaking. No, it's not. Because James didn't know Michael was his father. Because Sophie needed stability, not upheaval. Because the gap between Emily's world and Michael's seemed impossible to bridge. We'll figure it out, Emily said firmly. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll figure it out. Michael wanted to believe her. But as he looked at the sprawling mansion behind them, at the evidence of a life built without him, he wondered if love was really enough to overcome 25 years of separate lives. Thanksgiving Day, Emily's dining room could seat 20, but today it felt intimate with just the 4 of them. Sophie, weak from her latest round of treatment but insisting on wearing her fancy dress, chatted excitedly about the turkey. James helped serve, playing the perfect older brother without knowing that's exactly what he was. This is the best Thanksgiving ever, Sophie announced. taking a tiny bite of mashed potatoes. "We're like a real family." Michael's fork clattered against his plate. Emily's hand found his under the table, squeezing tight. "We are a real family, sweetheart," Emily said gently. "Sometimes families come together in unexpected ways." "James, will you be my big brother forever?" Sophie asked innocently. James grinned, ruffling her cap. "Forever and always, princess." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Forever and always. The same promise he and Emily had made at 17. After dinner, while Sophie napped and James played video games upstairs, Michael and Emily cleaned dishes in comfortable silence. It felt domestic, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Em," Michael said suddenly, hanging up the dish towel, "I need to tell you something." The tone of his voice made Emily freeze. "What is it?" "Dr. Peterson called yesterday. Sophie's latest scans." Michael's voice broke. "The cancer is back, aggressive this time, stage 4. Emily's face went white. "Oh God, Michael." "They want to try an experimental treatment, stem cell transplant, but it's risky and the cost." He laughed bitterly. "Even with your help, insurance won't cover it all. We're talking millions." "I have millions," Emily said immediately. "Whatever she needs, there's more." Michael couldn't look at her. "Dr. Peterson said the best chance for a match would be a sibling. A full sibling." The words hung between them like a death sentence. "James," Emily whispered, "I can't ask him to get tested without telling him the truth. And if we tell him the truth..." Michael ran his hands through his hair. "How do I explain that his sister might die if he doesn't help? But oh, by the way, I'm your father, and never knew you existed." Emily sank into a chair, the weight of the decision crushing her. Tell James the truth and potentially save Sophie's life, but shatter his world in the process. Or keep the secret and watch Michael's daughter die. "There's something else," Michael said quietly. "Something I haven't told you." Emily looked up, and the expression on his face made her blood run cold. "The night before I found you again, Sophie asked me about heaven. She said she wasn't scared to die because Mommy was waiting for her, but she was worried about leaving me alone." Emily's hands flew to her mouth. "I promised her she wasn't going anywhere, that Daddy would make sure she got better. But Michael's voice shattered completely. "What if I can't keep that promise? What if my little girl dies because I'm too much of a coward to tell our son the truth?" Upstairs they could hear James laughing at his game, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. In the guest room, Sophie slept peacefully, trusting in her father's promise that everything would be okay. And in the kitchen, two parents faced an impossible choice that would define the rest of their lives. 2 days later, "James, we need to have a serious talk." Emily's voice was steady, but Michael could see her hands shaking as she led their son into the library. They'd spent 48 hours planning this conversation, rehearsing every word, anticipating every question. But facing James, seeing his trusting smile, made every prepared speech feel inadequate. "Is everything okay?" James asked, settling into his favorite chair. "You guys look really serious." "Everything's going to be okay," Emily said, reaching for Michael's hand. "But there are some things we need to tell you. Important things about your family." "What about my family?" Michael stepped forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. "James, your mother and we need to tell you about your birth parents." "My birth parents?" James looked confused. "You said they were just kids who couldn't take care of me." "That was true," Emily said softly. "We were kids. We were 17 and 16, scared and forced apart by circumstances beyond our control." The words hung in the air as James processed their meaning. Michael watched his son's face change, saw the exact moment understanding dawned. "We," James whispered. "You said we were kids." "James," Michael said, his voice barely audible. "I'm your father." The silence stretched forever. James looked between them, his expression cycling through disbelief, shock, and something that might have been betrayal. "You're my dad?" James's voice cracked. "You're my biological father?" "Yes. And you, Mom, you knew?" This whole time you knew he was my father? Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I found out he was your father the day I met him again. I didn't know before that. But you knew I was his son when you introduced us. When you brought him into our house. When you let me call him sir and shake his hand like a stranger. James stood abruptly, pacing to the window. How could you do that to me? How could you both do that? We wanted to tell you, Michael said desperately, but we needed time to figure out how… Time? James spun around, and Michael saw his own temper reflected in his son's eyes. I'm 16 years old. I've spent my entire life wondering about my father, making up stories about who he might be. And he was right here. He was right here, and you both lied to me. We never lied, Emily protested. You let me think my father didn't want me. James's voice broke completely. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Knowing your own father couldn't be bothered to stay around. Michael felt his heart shatter. James, I didn't know about you. I swear to God I didn't know. But you knew the minute you saw me, didn't you? That first day, the way you looked at me, the questions about my scar, you knew. Yes, Michael admitted, I suspected. And you still said nothing. Because we were trying to protect you, Emily said. Because we wanted to do this right. James laughed bitterly. Protect me? From what? From having a father who wanted me? From having your life turned upside down, Michael said. From having to deal with adult problems you shouldn't have to carry. What adult problems? Michael and Emily exchanged glances. They'd hoped to have more time before this part of the conversation. James, Emily said gently, there's more we need to tell you. About Sophie. What about Sophie? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. She's sick, son, very sick, and she might need your help to get better. Christmas Eve, 3 months later. The hospital room was decorated with lights Sophie had insisted on hanging herself, determined to make Christmas magical despite the sterile surroundings. She'd been in isolation for 2 weeks following the stem cell transplant, but today, Christmas Eve, the doctors had finally declared the procedure a success. The cells are taking, Dr. Peterson had announced that morning, his voice filled with cautious optimism. Sophie's body is accepting James's donation beautifully. If this continues, she should be home within the week. Now, as snow fell outside the windows, their reconstructed family gathered around Sophie's bed. She was still pale, still thin, but her eyes sparkled with life that had been missing for months. Tell the story again, Daddy, Sophie said, snuggled against Michael's chest. About how you and Emily found each other. Which part? Michael asked, stroking her fuzzy new hair. The magical part, about the necklace. Emily smiled, touching the locket at her throat. After the transplant, she'd had a matching set made, one for Sophie, one for herself, and a simple chain for James. Once upon a time, Emily began, there was a boy and a girl who loved each other very much. But they lived in a world where sometimes people who love each other have to be apart. That's the sad part, Sophie interrupted. But keep going. The girl wore a special necklace that the boy gave her, and every day for 25 years, she wore it close to her heart. Because even though they couldn't be together, she never stopped hoping that someday, somehow, love would find a way. And then what happened? James asked. He'd struggled for weeks after learning the truth, angry and hurt and confused. But watching Sophie fight for her life had put everything in perspective. When love finally found its way, love brought them a family, Michael said, looking at his son with pride. James had tested as a perfect match and never hesitated to help, even when he was still angry about the secrets. It gave them a brave daughter and a courageous son. And a mom who makes the best cookies, Sophie added, grinning at Emily. And a dad who tells the best bedtime stories, James said, finally using the word that had taken him months to say. Emily wiped tears from her eyes. The road hadn't been easy. James still had moments when the hurt resurfaced, when he struggled with feeling like he'd been betrayed. Michael still worked 2 jobs, refusing to let Emily support him completely until he found his footing. And Sophie still faced years of monitoring and treatment. But they were together. Against all odds, through all the pain and loss and years of separation, they were together. Emily, Michael said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. There's one more part to the story. Emily's breath caught as Michael slid off the hospital bed and dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box. 25 years ago, I promised you forever, he said, his voice shaking. I know we can't get back the years we lost, but I'm hoping we can build new years together. Emily Carter, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and James and Sophie for the rest of our lives? Emily couldn't speak through her tears. She could only nod as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with 3 stones, one for each member of the family they'd created. Yes, she whispered, forever and always. Sophie clapped her hands in delight. This is better than any princess story. That's because it's real, James said, hugging them all. This is our real-life happily ever after. Outside, snow continued to fall on Christmas Eve, covering the world in pristine white. Inside, a family that had been broken by circumstance and fear was finally completely whole. The locket that had waited 25 years had finally brought them home.